Okay, we'll start live streaming, thank you. Okay, welcome everybody to the May 3rd Infrastructure Services Committee meeting. I'm going to start with apologies. We have Councillor Soper, Lindsay McKenzie and Councillor Kett. Can I have someone move that they be accepted? Councillor Ludlow, seconded Ms Coote. Put that motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? That motion is carried. The Zoom attendees, we have Councillor Abbott and Councillor Clark. And we're going to start with public forum. Right, I'd like to welcome members of the Invercargill Police Force. Would you like to come forward? We have Mike Bowman, we have John Bissett and
Holly Mahini.
Welcome. So I believe the subject is about CCTV and you may remove your masks.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
To speak. Okay, Mike. Welcome.
Thanks, members of this council, to invite us along to talk to the inner city CTVs. The reason for this request to come and talk to you is basically, you may recall back in 2015, I come and spoke to the council and spoke to this the need for new cameras then, and I think I started off with our vision for the New Zealand Police is that New Zealand is the safest country in New Zealand, and I said, why can't we be the safest city in New Zealand? And to do that, we need our community to feel safe and be safe. And we think an upgrade of the CCTV cameras will enable us to be a good point for people who are wanting to come into a new, vibrant city and will come into Invercargill and be safe. And we're not including the Invercargill City CBD. We're actually talking the whole city, because that's we want Invercargill to be safe. We want people in our community to be safe, and I think the proposal we have to put for you today is about boldness of this committee to invest in a much more wider CCTV platform across not just the inner city CBD, but also wider aspects of the community. And I highlight the fact that you have invested heavily in improving the infrastructures, or the shopping centres such as South Invercargill and North Invercargill. So why not keep them people safe as well? But look, I want to invite my team, Inspector Johnny Bissett, who's my area prevention manager, and Sergeant Holly Mahini, who's recently appointed to our prevention manager, who had prepared a PowerPoint presentation to give you some more clarity around why we need this upgrade. Johnny.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get that to run on the screen for you, but we'll talk to the kind of the topics that we talked about. So, I guess what we're trying to indicate to you really is around the point Mike made around there's real opportunity in being really bold in terms of, investing in some infrastructure that creates an environment right across the city where people will feel safe. Now, we know through our history and throughout the country and around the world, right, that there's clear examples where CCTV systems that are put together well and are spread out across the area will have a deterrence effect in terms of a number of issues that relate to policing, and a number of issues that also enhance that community safety feeling. So the big obvious one is serious crime for us. We have a number of serious incidents that do tend to occur in predictable locations, and that is areas that attract high foot traffic, or locations of interest like your bars, nightclubs, vulnerable locations such as banks and that type of thing. So, there's a clear example of the week just gone by with the tragic homicide that occurred here in Don Street in Invercargill. Fortunately, we have some CCTV of that incident. However, that is not City Council CCTV, and the City Council CCTV hasn't helped us in that inquiry at all, and that's a real shame from my perspective. There's a whole lot of opportunity in that space where investment right across the city will greatly enhance the safety of the individual and ultimately assist us in holding some of those people to account. There's a number of other areas that we wanted to briefly speak to. One is around vulnerable people. In the last 12 months, we've had around about 193 missing people in the city, and 427 calls for people who are intending to self-harm. Often people who intend to self-harm go mobile, and that, when I say mobile, I mean they'll jump in their vehicles and they'll take off. And these are people's families, their loved ones, and they're in a time of real crisis and need. And currently, the means by which we can locate these people is very limited. The investment into a good CCTV system that is well thought out across Invercargill City will enable us to find these people quicker and give them the help that they need. We had an example we can reference where we really tragically couldn't find Mr. Raymond Horn, who went missing in Queen's Park. Well, it's just another example of where CCTV investment can have tangible outcomes for the community. And the last topic that we were wanting to talk to just before we give you a sort of a summary was around our volume crime. So, you know, this is a frustrating piece of our job, but we had 550 burglaries in Invercargill City in the last 12 months. We had 254 stolen vehicles. Now, those two crime types are linked. We know that some of our people that we hold responsible for these crimes do steal motor vehicles and travel around and commit crime. Right? Really sadly, we have people come from out of the city into our city in a stolen car and commit a series of crimes. We have an opportunity again through a bold investment, like Mike said, to really build an infrastructure that gets us in front of that, where it gives us an opportunity to prevent a whole lot of harm caused by people that don't even live in our city, and we really have the opportunity. And the last kind of thing I'd just touch on was the trend you've seen in the media recently around youth crime or ram raids that have been happening in the North Island. Really unfortunately, the history tells us that what we see up country tends to make its way down, and we will likely see that type of offending in the year or years to come. Again, we believe now is the time to make an investment where we could tangibly have an impact in preventing that, and I think it's really important. So Holly, want to talk about our current state?
So currently there are 9 inner city CCTV cameras that we monitor from the station. As it stands at the moment, only one of those cameras works, and it is the one that faces from Calvin onto Don Street. The current state of it is that whether it's day or night, we cannot see number plates, we cannot recognise faces, we can get a rough colour of their clothing or of the car. Another case in point where it would have been a great tool to have is recently a police officer was attacked in his vehicle right under a CCTV camera that should be operating in D Street that was not. And unfortunately we've had to go to a member of the public in a private home to access footage, which also is not great. So the current what we have at the moment is not fit for purpose, and it's a real gap that we have to assist the people that we serve.
So ultimately, like what we're saying is that what we have is very limited. It's almost antiquated technology now. What we would have got in terms of investment, or the council would have got in terms of investment previously, you'll now get a far more greater system in terms of that because of the way technology has moved. What we are asking for, I guess, and I guess a challenge from us is around the opportunity to be bold is now. How do we invest in creating an environment where everyone feels safe? We'll have a whole lot of tangible outcomes in terms of the prevention of crime, yes, there's a really also a good assistance to us in terms of investigating serious crime, and for us, it's more a question of I can't think of a reason why you wouldn't.
I think to finish off is you are investing heavily in the inner city development. Why not invest into this to encourage not just Invercargill people to come into the inner city, but also rural and visitors to come to Southland and be safe in the environment of Invercargill. This is the opportunity, and I think it's an opportunity that we as a community want.
Thanks, John, Holly, and Mike. I'm going to open up now to questions. Right. We'll start with the Zoom people, and then Councillor Clark.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and welcome to Mike and his team. Just a couple of things you might be able to contribute on, Mike. One of the things that we've been focused on, I guess, is not necessarily the resolution of crime, but more on, which is the making the city safe, but it's more about feeling safe. And you heard people talk about, some of your staff talking about feeling safe.
Yes.
And it's been a concern for myself, and certainly Councillor Potney has been raising this forever, around the need for women and children to be safe in the inner city. And it's not necessarily from somebody that might murder them, as we saw on Don Street, or do a ram raid, but at a lower level, it's just from loutish behaviour, and behaviour that needs intervention from the police, not necessarily at a senior criminal level, but probably at an intervention level where a strong word, and people realise that if they do silly things in the inner city, they'll see as somebody in blue. So I just wondered about your thoughts on that.
I think you're right. I think it's not just about apprehending offenders. It's also about being able to observe patterns of behaviour, and look at prevention opportunities. What prevention opportunities can we look at, as not just the police, as a community, to implement to try and stop behaviours that might be, as you identified, as deterring people from feeling safe in the community. So this is just one tool that we can be utilising. But I think it also, the message it sends to people who want to come into the community and come into the environment and cause issues is there's a high likelihood with the upgraded technology that you will get identified and you will be made to account.
Sure. Thanks, mate.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Abbott.
Yeah, thanks for that, and thanks for your attendance here today. My audio is a little bit suspect at the moment, but I think I picked up that you said you had 9, or we had 9 cameras within the inner city periphery. And I think I picked up that the one from Calvin Street that zoomed up to the homicide didn't work. Am I right?
That is the only one that is working, fortunately.
And it did work, but you couldn't see anything from it?
No.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, right, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Lewis, and then
Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mike, John and Holly. Thank you very much. 3 aspects of the cameras I can see. There's the prevention because they're there. There's the monitoring and the problem solving, the crime solving. So what sort of percentage would you be hoping for with the technology we could probably install in the carbon?
Well, I think you at the present time, the possibility of getting a successful outcome from the existing cameras would be less than 5%, and that's because we've only got 1 camera and the quality is poor. But I think if you've got a much more extensive range of coverage with better technology, you'd have to be looking 60 to 70%. And the only thing that would deter that is perhaps poor lighting, or the fact that they were wearing some sort of disguise or a mask or something. But once you get a face to start an inquiry, that can save so much time.
There's also really potential indirect benefit to us. So, by example, the Mr. Horn, who unfortunately went missing in the park, there's thousands of man hours invested in that search. That's potentially thousands of man hours we could be investing into solving someone's burglary from their house, or preventing someone from dying on our roads. And so the benefit is through that cost savings. Yes, I agree 100%. The prevention is the foremost key, and I think that there would be a reduction automatically through that, through the implementation of the system. We would work really hard to assist you in promotion of that. I don't know if we could give you an actual percentage in terms of what we predict would reduce by crime. If you wished, we could potentially go away and look at what's happened around the world to try to understand if the impacts. You know, London, by example, has a fairly complex CCTV system, and there are other examples, but there is huge, in my view, cross benefits to the system.
Okay, thank you.
Because exactly the overseas, the United Kingdom one you see on crime programs, and they can track everybody down, they can predict the person's going to lift up the hand before they've done it, sort of thing.
No, thank you, Councillor Lewis. Next time, can you use the microphone? We've got Councillor Arnold, then Councillor Ludlow, then Ms. Coote, and Your Worship, I'll put you on the list.
A couple of questions, very simple questions. You did allude to the fact these cameras that we have now are very old. Do you have any percentages of or numbers from earlier on? Were they helpful earlier on when they all worked? Was there
I think they were beneficial when the quality.
Numbers?
No, I couldn't tell you, but I think what we had the ability then was that it was clearer. Even though it wasn't the greatest technology, but in those days it was better than nothing.
That's right.
And it just gives us an ability. If you find out, we get information that something's occurring at a specific location, we can quickly zoom the cameras in if there's a camera close to it and start to monitor the behaviours. At the very least, at those days, we could get some description of clothing so that staff could be more aware of what was going on before they arrived. So it's a staff safety aspect as well.
Do you have? Oh, that's, well, 3 questions. Do you have somebody there? Do you guys monitor?
We have
somebody there all the time.
We have somebody in
you used to, no point.
Yeah.
One camera.
So
well, in our watch house is we have the camera set up. We used to use the community patrols to help monitor those as well, but also we have the ability of we always have a staff member on duty in the watch house who, if they get a call, can come and monitor the CCTVs. Or the specific camera can move the camera to accordingly to where the problem might be arising. But we do utilise the community patrols quite heavily for that as well.
My next question is, because of your experience, do you guys have an idea where the cameras should actually be placed? Because you know where your trouble spots are. So from our point of view, you could say, well, we probably need 72 cameras. These are the sites that we would recommend that they be in. You have a...
Yeah, we've been working up a draft proposal, if you like, to hopefully work with the council's team around what that looks like. You know, I think there's some really obvious places. You know, this inner city is an obvious one that I guess what I would refer to as being a live zone. So you want most of that inner city area to be live, where anywhere you walk, you're seen on a CCTV camera. Then as you move out to the suburbs, you move to put like a positional type camera on intersections where we have automated number plate recognition systems in the camera. It'll pick up stolen vehicles, vehicles that are of interest to us, vehicles who people are in need of our help. That type of approach, I think.
That from our point of view would be very helpful, because then we would know kind of what
is that a question?
Next question, that's a little to follow on, but my last question is, you mentioned the burglary thing before, people coming into town and doing burglaries. Obviously, your response, you have to make a response, you know, quickly, if you like, to whereas, you know, the rumours burglary responses is not good, and the delays. Have you got a plan in place to? Well, what you would like, you know, you'd be onto it straight away, target it, and.
Well, what you think about is particularly rural burglaries or town burglaries.
Town burglaries.
Yeah,
we're doing only town.
Yeah, but if we get the cameras in the right locations, that enables us to, if we get description of vehicles, we can then look for those vehicles at exit points for the city, crucial exit points, and try and track the movements beforehand or afterwards to try and see if we can identify offenders, because sometimes we don't get notified about burglaries until some hours later on. But where we have the capability of a simple thing as a description of a car, then we can look for those common denominators in some of their entry points into the city, logical entry points or exit points out of the city.
I guess what you're saying is, if you had enough cameras, you'd be able to track the
Absolutely.
movements
Yeah.
and things.
And
I was thinking of prevention.
the two crime types of stolen motor vehicles and burglary are quite closely linked. We know that they participate in both those activities. So whilst the cameras aren't there to address burglary, we will detect stolen motor vehicles and be able to have a tangible impact in that, which will reduce burglary. We will know when a stolen car arrives in our city and be able to take some affirmative action, which we would every time, to intercept that vehicle and prevent what they were coming here to do, whether that's burglary or some other crime type. You know, the transportation of illicit substances is another one that often organised crime groups will use motor vehicles that are stolen or flagged by us, and it gives us the ability to be proactive in that space around when they arrive, rather than trying to follow them down when they've left.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Arnold.
I think one thing that I think you should understand is they don't just get monitored in Invercargill. They get monitored in our command centre in Dunedin, and they also get monitored in our command centre in Wellington. So in Wellington, they can zoom in across the country of centres who have cameras, and likewise in our command centre in Dunedin can look at Invercargill, Dunedin, and the likes of Queenstown and Wanaka as well. So they have a good wide range of visibility across the district around what's happening.
Okay, well, I'm going to go to Councillor Ludlow, then Ms Coote, then His Worship, and then Councillor Skelt.
One, and I'll keep it quick, I'm recognising that technology has moved from the one barely functioning Kelvin Street camera to, we've gone from there to high definition to 4K to 8K to also nighttime visibility cameras where you couldn't tell the difference between night and day. But what we're going to need to know is numbers and locations and cost. And that's, how long do you think it would take to get that sort of information back to us?
We were hoping, and forgive me, we were probably not sort of thought that far ahead, but we were sort of thinking we would work with someone from the council to shape up what that would look like.
Answering that in the item later on, it actually delves into a group of people to bring that information back and actually achieve that. Yeah. I'm going to go now to quickly go to Ms Coote, then His Worship, and then Councillor Skelt, and we'll have to wrap up the public forum.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think Councillor Ludlow actually just asked my question, which I was really curious about. I do want to acknowledge that, yeah, the work that you're doing out there is amazing, and that the cameras that worked sufficiently at the time are no longer fit for purpose. So we really need to be exploring that further. So thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Thank you.
Okay, Your Worship.
Yes, well, just thank you on behalf of the city for all the sterling work that you do in this area. But I was here when we had the original cameras, and it was a furious debate took place because they were going to cost $20,000 per camera. Is that sort of a increase in cost because of technology, which I thought was going to get cheaper by the day, or is it just such a superior system?
We get, with the improvements in their systems with cameras now, your value for money is a lot better. You can get much better quality and numbers of cameras for a lot less money now. So you're getting much better quality for a good funding.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Skelt.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Just want to endorse thanks to the New Zealand Police for the work that's been done, and particularly in recent times and difficult times. That's always been a fantastic job. Just to help with Councillor Lewis's question regarding the clarity of cameras and so on, and I'll come to a direct question in a moment, but Councillor Lewis, I'll give you an example. There's a venue with 22 cameras in the outer city, a sports venue, which has invested heavily in cameras. The apprehension rate rate around that is about 95% of the culprits that may be causing crime.
Councillor Scout, the question?
Well, no, it leads to, I'm answering Councillor Lewis's to move to the question. So it gives detail as to the number of, and that's the question I'm coming to for Mr. Bowman and his colleagues. So it's imperative in the sense of the extensiveness of what we do. And Mr. Bowman has mentioned the number of cameras and so on. The clarity I'm really interested in, and the ability, going back to the watch house, obviously. So it's about vehicle recognition, correct? It's about facial recognition.
I think in the right area, right? So different areas have different requirement types, if you like. So if you're looking at the inner city CBD, if you're looking around nightclubs or high pedestrian areas where, you know, the crime type that you're trying to prevent or to make people feel safe from is into person, then that's somewhere where you want to have cameras that are high definition. You can make out, identify someone by their face. If we're talking about now, we move out into the suburbs and entry exit points into the city, that's where we start to look at, we would recommend that the camera is a number plate recognition system. And I think, you know, like we would try to work with some technical expertise to try and understand what would be the best fit. But I think it would be a mixture across the city. And
Thank you. That was the reasoning for the enlonged engagement around the questioning. Thank you.
I'm going to fit Councillor Amundsen in, and that's it.
It's a quick question. I'm just wondering, given that it's a tool that the police use, why do councils have to pay for these? Sorry to ask, but
Well, I think it's a community responsibility because it's not a policing responsibility to have cameras in the community. I think of the council. I think it's they own the community. We are part of that community, and we are only a part where we are there to try and keep people safe. The council's view, position should be that they want to encourage people to come into their community. They should encourage people to want to be safe, and I think that's where you should be, and you are. You're investing heavily in the community, right across the city, to encourage people to reinvest into the community, to get engaged in it, and to do that, this is a small part of it. Does that answer your question?
I think if you reference back to the Policing Act, the core policing functions defined in that act, building infrastructure is in one. I think it's a community responsibility.
Okay. Hey, thanks, guys. Thanks, Holly, Mike, and John. Thank you very much. We'll be talking about this item later on today, and there's a few recommendations that we'll have to vote on.
Thanks
you
very much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
thank you.
Right, that takes us now to the minutes of the extraordinary Infrastructure Services meeting of April 2022. Can I have someone please move that we receive those? Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Seconded, Councillor Lewis. I'll put that motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? The motion is carried. I'm going to move now to the minutes of the Infrastructure Services Committee, 5th of April 2022. Can I have someone please move to be received?
I'll move.
Moved, Councillor Amundsen. Seconded, Ms. Coote. I'll put that motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? That is carried. It was a busy day, the 5th of April. We're going now to the minutes of the extraordinary Infrastructure Services Committee meeting, 5th of April 2022. Can someone please move? Thank you, Ms. Cook. Seconded, Councillor Lewis. I'll put that. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Right, that now takes us to the deliberations on the Stormwater Bylaw Consultation. And we have
Kia ora koutou councillors. Today we table an amended stormwater bylaw Post-consultation with the public for deliberations. A quick refresh on the process to date. The draft Stormwater Bylaw was adopted for consultation on the 2nd of Feb and was out for consultation with the public from the 4th of Feb to the 7th of March. We received a total of 13 submissions on the draft bylaw, a mix of commercial entities and private community members. 7 submitters supported the bylaw, 6 supported it but with some suggested amendments. No submitters were against the introduction of a bylaw. Hearings were held on the 5th of April where you heard from 6 submitters. From the submissions and the hearings, there were a number of points raised and council officers have considered these. Some of these points have been accepted and minor amendments are recommended to the bylaw. There were other points, for example, industry-specific exclusions that were considered. However, it is not recommended to include these, as was felt it could weaken council's ability to improve the water quality and deal with possible contamination events. We also wish to present the guidance manual to the committee, which provides greater granularity on the consenting process, stormwater discharge contamination guideline values, stormwater management plans, and sediment and erosion control plans. I'll now pass across to our technical experts who may wish to add a point or two, then happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you.
Kia ora, Michael. I'm your Stormwater Technical Officer here at the Council. So I'll be speaking to the guidance manual. Oh, sorry, I'll bring that closer. You want to hear me now?
Yeah.
Fantastic. So I'll be speaking about the guidance manual. A couple of the points that were raised by some of our submitters were speaking to specific guidance values for contamination events. So they wanted to know specifically to what level they could put in. Traditionally, we haven't seen this through other bylaws throughout the country. They generally are fairly vague, but it's getting to the point now where guidance values have to be submitted. So what we have is the guidance values as used by our stormwater discharge consent. So they are allowed to discharge to the same level that we're allowed to discharge to the receiving water. So no better, no less than what we're allowed to do ourselves. So these are the values that we're going to use going forward. So any site or business or premises is not allowed to discharge stormwater containing contaminants any worse than what City Council is allowed to discharge itself to the receiving waters. We've also added some information on how to conduct sediment and erosion control plan. One of the submitters suggested that it may have been an error that we're using Environment Canterbury's sediment and erosion control plan. With no disrespect to Environment Southland, Environment Canterbury's is far more comprehensive and it has a step-by-step user manual on how to submit and create sediment erosion. So hopefully that will stop sediments going onto our roads and into the curbside channel, into our stormwater network and into our receiving waters. Also, as a part of this is obviously the application to connect stormwater to our stormwater network through new builds. So subdivisions, that's more with Jeremy's team. Other than that, I'm happy to ask any questions anyone has.
Right, Jeremy, do you want to speak before we open up for questions?
No, I'll tackle any questions that might pop up.
Right, okay, so I'm going to open the floor for questions. Your Worship?
Yes, I was just wondering if there's virtually no opposition to it because the price isn't mentioned. And do you think there would have been more interest in it if there'd been costs involved?
Yes. I guess it's a bit difficult to answer, Your Worship. So when we put this out, the report to adopt the consultation talked about, possibly needing to get extra staff and some money being allocated towards an education plan around that. So we did put that out when we consulted, and I also believe in the annual plan consultation, some of the increases in there are reflective of what we're coming through with the stormwater proposed bylaws. So.
Any further questions? Yes, Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Chair. Just a very quick one. Accidental discharge, i.e. a car smash, drivetrain failure in a motor vehicle could result in a lot of oil being straight into stormwater. Penalties of that or dealing with such a situation?
Unforeseen incidences will be dealt as such. We will always be going for an educational process first. Infringement isn't our first port of call. Car crashes, unless they were doing something horrendously stupid, we would consider infringement in that situation, but always education first.
That's right.
Councillor Ludlow.
In amongst horrendously stupid, would you include the spilling of diesel for sustained loss of traction?
Indeed I would.
Right, further questions? Okay, thank you for that report. That takes us to the recommendations. We have 6 recommendations to the committee that we received the report. We received the amended Stormwater Bylaw. We received the Stormwater Bylaw Guidance Manual. We note the submissions received by the Infrastructure Services Committee on the 5th of April. We also note the summary of submissions, and we note the social media report. So those 6 recommendations, would someone like to move those as a group? Moved Councillor Amundsen, seconded Councillor Scalp. I'm going to put that motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? That's carried. That takes us next to the recommendation to council, which, sorry. Oh, Councillor Cracker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like it noted my abstention from the vote. I wasn't here at the meeting where we were viewing submissions, and I haven't also had a chance to review the online footage. So although I've read it and it's very clear that it's very well supported in the community, I'll just be abstaining for clarity and accuracy's sake.
Okay, that's noted. Thanks. Okay, so we now have the recommendation to council, which is number 7, and that includes through to A to N for the amendments. Okay, so unless there is an objection from anyone, I would, can I have someone please move that we adopt a revised stormwater bylaw which incorporates the following changes following consultation A through to N.
I'd move them in their entirety.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Second, Councillor Arnold. I'm going to put that. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? They are carried.
Okay.
Sorry, Ms. Cook.
Could you note me as an abstention, please, as an organisation of which I am the chair was a submitter?
Okay, right. We'll note that as well. Right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
That now takes us to review of Parks and Reserve Land Phase 1. So I take it there's going to be more of these. Okay, who would like to speak?
I would like to speak,
Okay,
please.
Carol. Thank you, Carol.
It's very close to me. Hang on. There we go. So you quite rightly note, Chair, that it's phase 1 of the review of parks and reserves land. Thank you all for previously coming to a workshop where we discussed the review. So that review was undertaken on looking at land managed by the City Council Parks and Recreation team. And this report actually summarises that review and identifies the potential land that we looked for. I suppose that phase 1, the ones that we thought could be easily disposed of. So that is land that costs us to manage, and we receive a little or no beneficial use from the community for this. Mm-hmm. So we're looking at 5 initial pieces of land, which total 1.5 hectares, 3 freehold, 2 reserve land. And going through this land, the recommendations are to receive the report and also to endorse proceeding with disposal, and that disposal is following the process as defined in the Parks disposal policy.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? No, sorry, from staff. No. Okay, I'm going to open up for questions. Councillor Arnold.
Just a quick question. I just noticed the piece of land in Scott Street would actually have no access. Is that an issue that you've sort of thought about, that it could only really be bought by somebody who's got a front section?
Yes.
But that's the way it is. Or would you break it up and sell it to 2 or 3 of them, or?
That's the investigation that we would need to do. Proceeding with this now is actually find out whether we do have interest in that land.
That's quite a big chunk of land, of course.
Yeah. It is one of the reasons why it's been put forward, because it's very difficult for us to manage with that access.
Yeah, well, you got no access. Well, you wire the school, I suppose, or
Okay, further questions? Councillor Ludlow.
Not a question, Chair. I guess you're looking for someone to move the recommendations, and I'm prepared to. Although I will note that in recommendation 2, I think this might be the second time I've moved that we proceed with disposing of 794 Queen's Drive. I think it did come up before council once before and was never actioned, but a bit like this time.
You are correct there.
So I move the recommendations, Chair.
Okay, so you're moving recommendations
1 and 2.
Receive the report, and 2, that's items A through to E. Can I have a seconder for that? Councillor Scott, seconder. I'm going to put that motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? That is carried. Thank you.
Good luck with the others.
Right, now we follow from our public forum subject, CCTV. Russell, do you want to present this?
Good afternoon, councillors, Mr. Chair. I've prepared this report. I guess it's part of an ongoing discussion we've had with CCTV over a period of time, and perhaps if I could just make some general comments to my report. I guess with any project there are many tools that you can develop, and CCTV is one of those tools that we have for our city centre. So as part of that, under the options that I've presented, is that I have created, I guess, those 3 options which identify where council wants to sit in terms of providing the CCTV, and the recommendation that sits under recommendation 2 is that we carry on, and we are probably one of the better placed organisations to be able to lead or drive or coordinate that management of the CCTV. I do recognise that the current CCTV is at the end of its life, and we have had all the technology that we have sits at the police station, and we attend upon request. And as you can imagine, and me sitting at the back hearing none of the working, our contractor's already been advised that we need to be there and actually identify what some of those issues are. We need to also make sure that the technology is fit for purpose, and we've heard about today some of the things that technology could do, but part of that needs to be, I guess, as part of the wider plan. Which ones of those as a community we do actually wish to actually implement, which includes facial recognition, number plate recognition, and I guess it's that wider issue about where this all goes across the city, and that's I have a thing that just got to watch that we don't play lightning strike. We run to where we've been. We do need to have the ability to be agile, and for our technology to actually be able to deliver the technology across the wider city, which will include our, I guess, our shopping centres, Bluff, and elsewhere where we want to provide the same level of, I guess, coverage. This initial report's really tried to start to focus on our city centre work, but whatever the technology is that we implement and start, it needs to be adaptable and expandable such that we can add to it as we need. Obviously, we have other CCTV networks, which include our parks and some of our buildings, which we will need to be able to migrate to those systems so that we can have it robust on the way forward. The police did help me quite a bit today. They said that we needed it to be well thought, needs to be a structure, and we need to have some boldness about what we do here. And I guess my report looks to start that process by establishing what I believe is probably the key to actually get this going into a point, is actually creating I call it a stakeholder leadership group, so that you can actually have that level of knowledge that you need on that group to actually drive this to actually be manageable within the community, but also deliver the technology and carry on. I think we heard a little bit about making sure that there was monitoring that's needed, because this equipment records. If you don't actually use it all the time, then it won't be as effective as it can be. And in that group, I've also suggested that the community patrol group has a voice, which is an opportunity to be participate, because they're often the people that support the police during the weekends. Technology is working in our favour, and things that were worth $20,000 a few years ago are certainly much cheaper. We also need to make sure that as we do things around the community, that we use Wi-Fi, our own cabling, and all that, I guess, other technical bits and pieces that actually make them work in the remote places. The further you get away from the city centre, the harder this is, but it is now possible with the technology that is available to us. So I'm happy to present the report and answer any questions.
Just firstly, I just want to touch on the financial implications, and that's obviously the budget. It's noted as $300,000. Now, going back to 2015, when we first sort of touched on this, or maybe a bit earlier, I remember a budget of $2,000 being already there as reserves, or that it was, the money was already allocated. I've got a pretty good memory. And so is this, are we finding 300,000 new dollars, or do we have an existing reserves that we've been putting money aside, or that it goes back to 2015?
If Mike would like me to answer that one, I'm happy to do so. My recollection was that that money was identified as a budget, and through our process we have changed from having reserves to a net debt. And as part of that process, what we're seeing is that this money is now being budgeted and brought forward into the... so the money hasn't gone away, it's just now being brought forward to be spent.
Okay, now that's answered that. Sorry. Go back, I'll start with the Zoom people, and Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Just two issues, really. From what we heard from the police today, it seems to me that they're wanting a much wider platform, I guess, than what we probably initially envisaged, which was the CBD. So from what I recall, they said CBD, Windsor, South City, Bluff, and exit and entry points into the city. So does that make the project much bigger than what you've costed for?
Mr. Chair, that would be correct, but I think part of the process needs to be, let's establish what the scope of the project is so that you can put the numbers to it. I guess what we're suggesting is that there's this budget available, and depending on what other infrastructure and the wider technology that you need to support this, this is just not about cameras, this is about having recording devices, this is cabling or Wi-Fi units that you've got to put in place. Let's see what we actually truly do need, and as that project is scoped, then we can bring it back to council with greater clarity around what the financial implications will be and who might support it.
Yeah, and just a final question, Chair, which is really for yourself, given that you've been pushing for this for a long, long time, and your I guess your expertise in the field, is 300,000 a realistic figure for a citywide network?
Look, 300,000 is actually, I would have to compliment that budget, because that's very realistic. To give you an idea, I was not going to give any details on costings and stuff, but to answer His Worship's question with a $20,000 camera, a very suitable, say 6 megapixel camera installed, you're looking around $2,000, I would guess. So you know, work it from there. You've still got the recording, you know, the recording technology, but at 300,000, I would say is a very, very well thought out budget.
Thank you.
So Mr. Chair, one of the things that we are fortunate of is that we do have a relatively extensive fibre network ourselves around the city that actually connect our businesses, which gives us probably a more unique opportunity to be able to connect cameras to those networks and run the high definition cameras that you have to do to get what the police are looking for. So we do actually have a whole lot of that infrastructure that we've been consolidating over the last few years, when it doesn't necessarily appear we've been jumping up and putting new cameras, but we do have fibre cabling to a number of places, and that's also part of what's been going on in the city centre, is making sure that we can have cabling going to the places that we will need to put cameras in and adapt to it.
Right, so I've got Councillor Arnold was next. Or did you?
You didn't talk to me.
With the money thing too, actually. Is there any thought to have to access any outside funding for this, as it's really sort of a community thing as opposed to just city council? I know we are the community, but you know, like ILT or for their premises, business people as well, perhaps in certain areas.
Mr. Chairman, I haven't necessarily been out looking for other funding partners, but there are certainly opportunities where I guess other community or like businesses where they have public space cameras may wish to be able to contribute. The Privacy Act and how you actually manage and protect those cameras is obviously, or protect the images that you save, or what you save as for a purpose, is I guess one of the challenges, and that's one of the advantages that we've had to a certain degree, is that the camera gear has sat at the police station, so the only people who can see our current camera are actually the police.
So I'm talking about them funding your cameras, you know?
No, I haven't been out there or had any discussions with other parties.
Councillor Ludlow, then Ms. Coote, then Ms. Scott.
Thanks, Chair. I guess feedback for the stakeholder representatives to consider is following on from the presentation of police and their suggestion that the area covered could be much wider than what we're looking now. It would be useful if we were able to get a report that looked at it in a staged approach, as we bite off each section of the town in doable lots, bearing in mind the tremendous capital expenditure that we're facing currently.
No, that's a very wise thought. Right, Ms. Coote.
Kia ora. Just in regards to the cameras and fit for purpose, are they exploring to take a stage approach, or are they testing certain camera technology? I mean, it's like anything, it changes all the time. I'm just looking how we are able to continue to be update, technology savvy.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Really good question about how you actually keep up to date. And I guess the first thing that I'm promoting in my timeline is to make sure that we actually correctly we understand the problem that we're actually trying to solve, and then scope the project to make sure we can deliver. And that can be by staging it, by technology, and making sure that what you actually implement is what you want. You are able to buy an amazing range of tools. Some of those come at costs, and some of those will be harder to maintain, but you have to, I guess, look at that and make sure that what you're getting is what it is actually solving the problem that you have.
Okay, thank you for that. Ms. Scott.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Pearson, it seems to me that one of the first things that we might have to do is establish what exactly is available within the community at the moment. Not talking about what we have, but what is there with private businesses, etc., so that we're not putting cameras or duplicating things that are being done by others. If we're going to make our money work smarter, are we doing an audit of what already exists?
Mr. Chair, another good question. That one of the issues that we face is that it's the privacy requirements that you are only allowed to store image for the purpose that you say you are. And those individual companies or businesses that are collecting imagery need to be able to, if they wish to, send it on to somebody, be able to do that for what purpose. So the use of private-based CCTV is typically not what sits within a public space camera. I definitely do believe that council could gain benefit from, I guess, having a system that is able to manage the park system and other areas of council so that we actually have, I guess, the expertise in-house to do those things. But we shouldn't necessarily cover areas where there's good CCTV already. I don't want to duplicate. But one of the things I think the police do struggle with, but they do achieve, is that if they need to go out there and hunt in the community to find the images, lots of people have images that are cameras pointing down streets and all sorts of stuff for whatever reason that aren't necessarily always obvious to everybody, but they typically find images that they're looking for. It may not be the quality, and typically the police are looking for something to be able to trace that sequence of events as quickly as they can do.
That in part does answer my question, because I think what's in my mind is that there's a difference between us putting cameras to do the things like face recognition or number plate recognition, but also the incident or problem solving thing. A crime has been committed, how do we do it? And I'm not sure whether that's where our money is best invested. That's in my head, but I'm willing to be convinced differently. So in this audit, is that what, or the work that you're going to do, is that part of the question and answer process that we'll go through?
I would believe so. The first thing is to make sure we understand what we want to achieve, which is the problem. And if it means let's have an audit of this, of where the cameras are and what we know, then that's absolutely fine. That's achievable.
Councillor Crackett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To my mind, the problem that we're trying to solve is actually really quite simple. It's in the interest of public safety, and especially in that really dense inner city hotspot area that we're investing multi-million dollars across two major projects of the streetscape and ICL. It's really clear to me that with the heightened foot traffic and the heightened amount of people that will be knocking around there, and the entertainment value that will be part of that restarting the heart, the problem that we're going to want to solve is the fact that we currently have no visibility. We've got no visibility over the assets, we've got no visibility over the people, we've got no visibility, or in fact, sorry, one really shoddy camera that I've unfortunately had the, well, fortunately and unfortunately had the opportunity to view from the watch house, obviously not on the right side of it, not on the wrong side of it. And I remember being there and actually looking at that camera and its footage and going, oh my goodness, I can't believe that this is all that we can see from a public safety perspective in that CBD. So I would hand on heart be really glad to see this happen. I know that Councillor Pottinger and Councillor Clark have had this on the radar for a really long time, as well as myself. So if nobody has moved those, then I would be perfectly happy to do so.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for seconding that. Just one comment from the chair. Look, you raise a good point, Alex, and looking at the being on the City Streetscape Committee, that's going to become very real soon, and it's going to be amazing. It's going to be just spectacular. But unfortunately, because it's so good, it's going to be open to vandalism, and that's what I really fear. I mean, the whole of East Street, Don Street, you got these beautiful rain gardens, you've got furniture, you've got all sorts of stuff. Now, that's just asset protection, let alone people being there. So now you raise a good point, Alex. Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Councillor Amerson.
Just a quick question. I'm just wondering whether the stakeholder group should include a member from the Māori Wardens as well, because they also do a lot of community patrol stuff and assistance to the police.
Yeah, I think what I'd like to do is with the recommendations is that it says here it wants to confirm the stakeholder representative. I'd like to first have the meeting say we note, if we amend that to note the councillor stakeholder representatives, and then come back to council with those alterations, because really it is work in progress, and I think we don't want to, if we confirm it, that there could be other people that need to be on board. So are people happy with that alteration, the mover?
I'd be happy with that, Mr. Chair, to say that we're going to come back with a confirmed list, as that list that has been presented may not yet be exhaustive, such as Māori Wardens may want to be included. Okay, so we'll change that, if we can change that to note the councillor stakeholder representatives. Is that okay with the seconder? Yeah.
Okay, so I'll put that motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? That is carried. Thank you very much. That now takes us to the activities report, which is full of activity.
You'd hope.
And we have our activity man, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, councillors, your worship. Just take the activities report as read. I'll be talking on behalf of both the leisure and recreation and the infrastructure services area, and between Michael and I, we will do our best to answer any questions you might have in that area. Just some key points to draw your attention to this month. Obviously, Splash Palace have achieved their Pool Safe accreditation again, which is great for our community. However, we've noted in there that we are having some significant recruitment issues at the moment, much like the rest of the country in this sector. And so what our team are doing is looking at pulling together a unique and we're hopefully a successful training package that focuses on young people's careers. And I'm certainly a byproduct of the pool sector. I started out as a lifeguard some 20 odd years ago, and we want to start creating career pathways for our young people. And so we think this is a great opportunity to promote and push this as a great area to work, a great chance to work with our community, and a good start into local government. We're also working on, as you'll see, the numbers are related to hydroslide use. Generally, Splash Palace's numbers are recovering slowly, but recovering. However, we were looking at the hydroslide numbers, and we are going to be putting some re-engagement with this activity packages together, and this will occur post the close down, which commences later this month. And so once we reopen Splash Palace, we hope to have a package of services and opportunities to get people back into the facility, to get them back into loving swimming, and to get them back onto the hydroslide. So we'll come back to you with what that looks like later. In terms of the parks team, they've made some great progress, and obviously we've been able to open in the last period of time the umbrella installation, which was I think really well received, and also some really great success stories coming out of Costello and the legacy that's given that community. Finally, in a summary of the operations from the infrastructure area, it has been a really busy month, and I think the team have provided a really good summary of the activities that they've been doing across our infrastructure assets. And obviously of particular interest to the community this week is around Stead Street and the completion of that stage of the project. And I have my team, they're going to be on site. They're talking to the contractors every day now about the reopening on Friday, and we'll be communicating via Facebook, via the internet, website, and also via media release about the opening. And so to that, I'm happy to either pass to Michael for any further comments or happy to take any questions.
Okay, questions, councillors?
No questions, just lots of good news in there.
Right.
Congratulations around the Pool Safe reaccreditation. That's really good.
All right, Councillor Clark.
Yeah, can't let this go without at least one question. In relation to the pump track at Otara, just a couple of things. I note in the public announcement that you're going to plant about 1,400 native trees. When's that done? Is that an autumn task?
Yes. My parks team are right behind me. They could actually give you the exact details rather than me trying to give you a summary.
And the other issue, Steve, was the issue of, I had a local resident, so there's no secret about this is Tim Frampton, said that he was prepared to pay for some either tables or barbecue areas in there. And is that something that the parks people are interested in having some sort of private sector input into it as well?
Yeah, look, thank you, Councillor Clark. In terms of the plantings, they are occurring, and I think we've just been waiting for the right environmental conditions. And I do know that the team have been talking with a number of members of the community about how they might contribute to the ongoing development of the Costello Park area. So, and we know Mr. Frampton is one of those people we've been talking to.
Excellent, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Clark. Further questions? Anybody? Right, well, thank you, Steve. Recommendations are, we have 6 recommendations. We received the report. Note the approval of grant funding from the ILT Foundation. Note the receipt of Pool Safe accreditation 2022. Note the progress made on the new installation of the umbrella sculpture. Note the progress made on the Costello Park pump track project, and also acknowledge with increasing cremation numbers and increase in resources planned for this service. So I'm going to have someone move that. Is that Councillor Abbott?
Yes.
Thank you. Moving those. Seconded, Councillor Skelt. I'm going to put that motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? That is carried. Thank you. Now we are going to move to public excluded. Can I have someone please move? We're going to public excluded. Thank you, Councillor Skelt.